Hey, Rhonda. Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You have a lot of wind on.
Yeah, I locked myself on the porch.
Holy shit.
So the dogs won't bother me.
Oh, okay. I thought you locked yourself out of your house.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
windy out here. We've got waves. We've got white tops on the lake.
Wow.
Guess we have a storm coming in. I don't know.
All right. Let's give it a few more minutes to see if anybody else is going to join. Let's see.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm cleaning up dog piddle.
Okay.
Worried of my life.
Let me.
Oh, mercy. How do you pee all the way across a room? Like, I don't understand. Turkey. I will go after work and get you some more puppy pads.
All right. Let's see. Who else? I know that Vivia. Let's see. Vivia signed up. I don't know if she's going to be here today. And we have, I know Erica watches it on the replay. And winter. All right, events.
Oh, I'm missing Miss Pam.
Pam, that's right. That's Pam's the other one. I don't know if she's got a computer back or not.
Oh, that's right. I forgot it broke.
Yeah, so we're missing Pam and Vivia. Erica will not be here because she is she teaches during the day. So what I'm gonna do is probably give it another minute or so and then we can get started.
How was your full moon last night, Miss Reagan?
I did nothing. I went home and chilled out. I did absolutely nothing.
But
I'm so
sometimes
freaking
that's the
tired
best
right now.
something.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm completely and 100% overwhelmed and underwater. It's not been a pleasant experience.
I'm sorry.
All right. I went to the doctor today to talk about menopause. I'm like, you got to give me something. I mean, you got to do something for me because this is kind of crazy. And she did some tests. She says, I'm postmenopausal, actually. I'm not in menopause right now. I pretty much already went through most of it. She says, and some of the symptoms you have, they're going to linger for a few years. And she says, there's nothing that we can really do about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that really sucks.
Yes. I am missing my notebook for this class. I have the notebook for the other class. I'm going to grab my notepad. I will be right back.
All right. As soon as she gets back, we'll get started.
I have 2 more classes, one at 3 and one at 4.
You okay?
Yeah. I forgot my notepad. Son of a jump. There we go. You're welcome. Can you do me a favor? Can you go out to the car, put your shoes on, go out to the car, lift the thing and see if they got all the glass out? He said he was going to do it, but can you just check and make sure?
Yeah.
Since you wrecked it.
All right. You back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I have questions. Did anybody have questions from the lesson from last month?
I did not, but I did think it was very interesting the way there's an overlap in a sense of each of the culture. Like they're not completely overlapping, but you could find some kernel of the beginnings in every single culture.
Mhm.
And even with Christianity, which I left Christianity to come here, even they use magic, they just don't call it magic.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, keep in mind, everything that Christianity is, they stole it from paganism too. So
Mhm.
Christianity
My
is not
friend
an
is
original
Catholic, and
religion.
he's like, oh, you're doing this and you stole that from us Catholics. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you Catholics stole it from us.
Yep. Catholics in particular stole it. So did you guys have any questions about any of the material, any of the chapters you read, anything like that in lesson 1 before we move on to lesson 2?
I did forget to post my answer to last question. I thought I had hit it, but it's gone. So I will hit that this evening for the final question in the last chapter. I thought I hit submit already, but I guess I didn't.
Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Where's my desktop? Here we go. Yeah. Okay. And all right. Can everybody see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Everything? Okay. So one of the
Mhm.
first things we're going to talk about, and this is really, it's important because it goes to the foundation of what paganism is. And obviously witchcraft falls under that umbrella, right? So paganism is a very big umbrella that a lot of different religions within paganism fall into it. So you have witchcraft and Wicca and shamanism and voodoo and, your Reuben practices, and all of those things fall under that pagan umbrella. The same way that in Christianity, you have that Abrahamic traditions umbrella, and then you're under that you're going to have Islam and Christianity and the Jewish mysticism. All of that is going to be under that umbrella. So we are under paganism, under that umbrella, and paganism is an earth-based religion. And basically what that means is that everything that we do in our practice has to do with our relationship with earth. So we're going to be like the positions of the earth are very important to us. The seasons of the earth are important to us. Where the earth is in comparison to the sun or in comparison to the moon is going to be important to us. So our path, everything that is going on with the earth, our path is a reflection of that. Does that make sense? So this is why there's no good and bad, good and evil, right? Like there is in Christianity. So in Christianity, you have this all source of powerful good energy, and then you have this source of all evil energy, right? And that's a relationship, that religion that's based on human morality. And ours is not. So ours is based on the idea of balance, and you have light and dark. There's not necessarily evil and good. So dark things are not evil. You can look at the nighttime and say it's dark. It's not evil, it's just dark. And the same thing with light, daytime, not evil, it's just day. So that is basically, that is the one point when people switch from a Christian path into a pagan path that is really difficult to flip that switch, because we are so indoctrinated in the Christian religion to think of good versus bad, that when you come in here and you're like, wait a minute, there is no good. And you're like, no, good is, you choose that. You make the choices of how you want to interact with that energy. But the energy itself that we are working with does not have any morality, if that makes sense. Is everybody with me on that one?
Yes, that was confusing when I came out of Christianity, like, because I heard people they practice dark magic. So to me, that's, from being Christian, I'm thinking demon, devil. I didn't realize until I started reading these books.
Yeah. Well, and dark magic can refer to a lot of things, right? So it can refer to a left-hand path. It can refer to what a lot of times people call the crooked road, which is a path that goes more back to this idea of personal magic, right? You wronged me, I'm going to do something about it. You made me happy, I'm going to do something about it. So it's the idea, it's not necessarily that it's evil, it's the idea that a lot of those paths are justified by the practitioner and how they decide that they're going to do things. So practitioners who, and honestly, that is the idea of dark magic, is a terminology that was invented. Magic is not dark or light. Magic just is. And then we put our spin on it, whatever it is that we want.
Got you.
Any questions on that?
With your talk about the crooked road thing, it sounded like maybe like what the Christians used to call like an eye for an eye.
It's not necessarily an eye for an eye, but the crooked path a lot of times refers to ancient practices where a lot of, if you look at ancient witchcraft, especially if you get a chance to read Gemma Gary's book called Traditional Witchcraft, she talks about the Cornish ways of practice. And that is a very interesting book because the Cornish way, this is an ancient, true traditional witchcraft practice. And this is a way where you would have a witch sitting in her little cabin in the woods, and people, when they needed help and healing, they would come to that witch. And when they needed somebody to be cursed or get rid of somebody in their life, they would come to that witch. So it's the idea that the crooked path is the idea that a witch is going to do whatever she needs to do to serve her community, whether it be good or bad. She does whatever is required of her. So it's
Understood.
not the idea of just, being all love and lighty. This love and lighty is part of the New Age movement. And so when you start looking at true witchcraft, it is not love and light. So this whole idea of white witchcraft is very New Agey.
It sounds very similar to the oracles that I was reading about when I was studying. They're kind of like they're off by themselves, and they're telling good and bad.
Yep. So with that being said, the question for me is, what does spirit mean to you? When you talk about spirit, what do you guys think about?
Universe,
The universe as a whole?
Mother Earth, universe, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. Isn't it the same thing?
Yep.
It's your whatever you choose to call it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say it's like your piece of the universe or the earth or the source. It's like whatever's in you. There's spirit that's out there and there's spirit that's in you. It's your piece of that.
Right. And what I like to think of it is it's a very specific sentient energy that exists in everything. And so it's this idea of sentience, right? And that's really what it boils down to. And so spirit can mean God, goddess, it can mean source, creator, Allah, Jesus, Holy Spirit, whatever you want to throw in there, it's going to have the same meaning. And this is why I like to call it the divine blob, because nobody really knows what it is. And it really doesn't matter. The definition of what it is doesn't matter. We are part of it. And whatever it feels like to you, that is your definition of what divinity looks like. And that's really the way it's supposed to be. And each person's definition is going to be different. So what divinity means to me is going to be very different than what divinity means to you guys. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And our relationship with divinity is going to change as we progress in our path, as we learn more, and as we decide, how things like my view of what the divine is has changed dramatically, I would say, over the last 8 years, because I went and got initiated in voodoo, and then I went and got initiated in shamanic practice. And then when you start bringing all of these pieces together, and each one of these paths have a different view of what it means to be divine, what I've realized is that they are all right. So I just pull what I need from each one and create my own little definition for what it means to me. And that's how I can relate to it. And I need for you guys to do the same, because it's going to mean something special and different for you than it means for other people. The other thing I want to talk about is books and grimoires. And this is actually, I just had a client in yesterday that this was an issue. So anybody can publish a book. Anybody can put up a web page. So it doesn't necessarily mean that what you are reading is accurate. So there is no book, no divine book that says this is what it is and here's the proof and all that. So every single book and grimoire that you pick up is somebody's interpretation of their own path, is essentially what it is. So the books, I recommend people to read as many books as they can and pick up as many as they can, because you always learn something. If it was a horrible book, you learn that, okay, obviously those things here don't resonate with me at all. So you've learned something from it. And if it's a good book, you may pull a few things that may be, little practices that you'll carry on for the rest of your life. So think of them as suggestions. Just because you read it in a book or you read it in a website does not mean that it is the end all of everything. And so I had a poor girl in my office yesterday, a client who she's basically making herself crazy because she's reading all these books and watching all these videos, and there's a lot of contradictory information. And so every time a new thing comes in, she's like, oh my God. And I said, you need to pick what your path is going to look like. Pick the things that resonate for you. What people are sharing with you is their experience. Your experience is going to be different. So, and that was, honestly, it was driving her crazy. She was, in serious distress when she came to see me yesterday. And that's the reason why. So just keep in mind, keep it in check. I always recommend, I think knowledge is power. Reading things, being aware of things is great. Take everything you read with a grain of salt. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, because what I'm sharing with you is what's worked for me and what's in my path. As you start walking down your path, you're going to start experiencing it, and you're going to go, well, my experience is not exactly like hers. Mine's a little bit different. And you may want to go back and modify that experience and modify your ideas to meet what it is that you're experiencing. So just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that it is the law. It means that this is one method that I'm providing for you, and you can choose to use that or can choose to use any modification of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So do you guys understand the cycles of the planet? So let's talk about that a little bit. What are the cycles of the planet? Can you name a few of them?
I thought it was like the seasons or the Sabbats. More
Well,
towards the
those are
Sabbats than the seasons.
Those are the big cycles, but our planet has a bunch of smaller cycles, right? When I used to teach, this class used to be broken up into two classes. It was called Wicca 1 and Wicca 2. And when I taught Wicca 2, I would challenge people. When I gave the homework out, I used to teach it in person, and I would say, if you can find something in this planet that is not part of a cycle, you don't have to do any homework. That was my challenge to them. And nobody ever found it, because there is nothing. Everything in this planet is part of a cycle. Let's look at this pen. This pen is part of a cycle. There's a cycle that created this rubber. There's a cycle that created this plastic. There's a cycle that created an ink. And then there's another cycle that created the people packing this. There's another cycle that created the people that made the boxes to pack it. There's another cycle of people who drove this somewhere to sell it. Another cycle of the store that's selling it. And then the final cycle of me buying it and what I'm using it for. So our planet is filled with cycles, and those cycles interact with each other. And so you can look at, this is obviously a man-made cycle, but when you start looking at planetary cycles, you're looking at the rock cycle, you're looking at the water cycle, you're looking at weather cycles, you're looking at cycles in the ocean and the cycles in the mountains, and all of these cycles, and all of these things are going to influence your practice. And the first connection that every witch should have is a connection with your land and where you live, because that is going to be the central part. That's going to be the central cycle that is going to run your life. So if you live in South Carolina, your cycle is going to be very different than if you live in Maine. So it's important for you to connect with your local area, understand what are the cycles of the planet around you, because those are the cycles that are going to have the most impact in your day-to-day life, in your energy cycle, and in your practice as a whole. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. So relationships and animism. So does anybody know what animism is?
Well, I can read it on the screen now that I said I was like, oh no, and then I see it on the screen.
Yeah, don't read it, but just from your ideas. When I say animism, what do you think?
Animals.
Yes.
Animals is the one thing you think. But actually animism refers to animated, right? So it talks about that everything has a life of some kind. Everything that was created is animated. This was created. This was birthed somewhere. Somebody made it, and therefore it's got its own consciousness. So the idea of animism is the idea that everything around you that was created by something, because it's no different than us, right? We were created. by our parents. And so the materials used to create us are very different than the materials used to create this, but the process is the same. This was put together piece by piece. We were put together piece by piece. So the idea is that everything around us was created at some point, and everything that is created has some type of a spirit about it, because the spirit is created as the item is created. This is when the spirit is basically comes together with that. So when we talk about animism, this is why animism and relationships go hand in hand. Witchcraft doesn't use a lot of animism concepts, but in shamanic practice, that's all we use. So in shamanic witchcraft, animism is going to play a huge role. I mean, we're still going to use the other aspects of witchcraft of energy management, but animism is going to play a huge role in us, because everything that we do around us, we are going to enter into relationship with it. So when you start working with an animal, you're entering into relationship with that. When you start working with a tool, you're entering into relationship with that. So let me give you another example. So like, for example, this is a tool I use for healing and I keep on my altar. And this was made by a friend of mine, right? So this was created, and it's got a little bit of bunny fur right there. It's got a fluorite ball. It's got a preonite piece, and it's got some cactus wood over there, right? Some cholla cactus. And then it's also going to have green aventurine all around. So this is a great piece for healing of all kinds. This was created by her. And the minute that she created it, she imbued it with its own spirit, its own life. And so when I work with this tool, I don't just pick it up and like, you know, I connect with it first, and I ask it if it wants to work with me. And believe it or not, when people first told me that, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go home and ask if it wants to connect with me. Yeah, it will answer. The last lady that took this class 2 classes ago, she went home. She didn't believe me. So she went home and she had an altar bell, and she went and she asked her altar bell if it wanted to work with her. And she got a resounding no. And so she says, I've been working with this thing for years against its will.
Wow.
And that is akin to slavery. So it's like, it's the same thing as if you meet somebody at a coffee shop and you say to them, you know, hey, I'm going to build a deck in my house. Do you want to help me? And they say, no, I don't. And you say, well, you know what? I'm taking you home. That's kidnapping. And then slavery when you make them do the work for you. So your tool, every single tool you have, before you start using it, you want to connect with that tool and find out if that tool wants to be part of your toolbox, if it wants to do the work that you are asking of it. And we believe that everything is at choice. Everything. We are at choice. The animals around us are at choice. Plants are at choice. All of these things are at choice. And so as we start working with that, we want to make sure that we recognize the choices that our tools around us have in the process. When I first started in shamanic practice and this concept was really driven home to me, at first I thought, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, like this is alive. Okay, whatever. That was my first initial thought, because that is how witchcraft and Christianity says, you know, only humans have souls, animals don't, and all this. Spirit does not care. Spirit basically looks at everything the same way that our planet as a whole has a soul of its own. So does this. So does this. So do you and I. So does your cat, your dog, your bird, the tree outside. All of these things have souls. And so when we start working with the planet around us, what we're doing is we're always working in relationship. We're going into relationship with these things around us. It's got to be a give and take. We want to say, hey, do you want to work with me? Most of the time, you're going to get a yes. Most of the tools I have at home, I get a yes from. I have some quartzes that I picked out of my backyard that I used to store moon energy in them for later use. So I have the same crystals that I use to store new moon energy. Once I use that energy, I smudge them and then I put them back out to capture energy. And I have the same crystals that use full moon energy. Before I put each crystal out, I ask it if it wants to participate. I can tell you that some crystals say yes every time and others don't. Others say yes one time, and then the next month they're going to say no. Then the month after that, they may say yes, or then they may say no for 3 months. And then 3 months after that, they say yes. But I always ask, So it's important when you start working with your tools that you enter into a relationship with them. You take care of them because you want them to take care of you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, but say, like you said, the girl has a bell that won't work with her. She tries it for 6 months and it still won't work with her. What then? Does she like find someone to, gift it to? Like, does she let it go?
Well, she asked me, she says, so I asked the bell if the bell wanted to work with me, and the bell said no. She says, so I never asked it before. I just bought a bell and started working with it. So she says, what do I do with it now? I said, you bought a bell, just put it on your altar. If you really want to work with that bell, sit down with it and go, what are you going to help me with? What are you for? And the bell will tell you what it's there for. It may be that that bell is not going to work with her on a daily basis, but it may have a very specific purpose and specific ceremonies. It may be that that bell doesn't want to do magic, period. It's like I was created to make this little sound, and that's all I want to do. And in that case, you don't use it in your spiritual practice. You may just leave it in your home as a decorative piece or whatever you want to do with it. But it's always important to ask and then to listen for the answer, to make sure that every time you work, you are always in relationship.
Okay, I have a question.
Honestly never thought of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Miss Rhonda.
No, I never thought of it either. When I got into that 5 or 6 years ago, I was under the understanding that, every full moon, without doubt, you drag all your shit out of all your crystals out, and they have to be charged under the full moon. Is that necessary, number one? And number two, do you ask before charging them, or does cleansing them?
Crystals do not need to be charged ever.
I mean, cleansed.
Well, cleansing, full moon is not going to change. It's not going to cleanse your crystals, and the full moon is not going to charge your crystals either. Now, and I think this is where this comes from, is this idea that a lot of times what a witch will do, and comes from a misunderstanding, right? We are in the soundbite generation. People hear a soundbite of something that somebody does. They don't bother to read the whole story. They just go, oh, putting my crystals in the moon to charge, right? And this is what they start doing. The fact is, what witches use crystals for is we use them to capture specific energies. So why do I put some crystals in the moonlight to charge on the full moon? Because I may need full moon energy later on in the month when there's no full moon. So then I have that crystal that's holding that full moon energy for me. I can grab that crystal, I can extract that energy from it and still do my work with full moon energy, even though we may be in a new moon, or we may be in a waning moon, or whatever cycle it is that I need. So that is one of the things that you can do with your crystals. Crystals are great little energy batteries. So they're going to hold energy of all kinds. I have mine marked not just by full moon, but I have them marked by full moon and what sign they're in. So let's say it's the full moon this month and I want to do full moon work, but it's a full moon in Pisces. And I really needed a full moon in Aries. I go into my little box. I say, oh, this is my Aries full moon energy right here. Boom, it gets charged with my Aries full moon energy. Does that make sense?
Wow.
I had no idea. Like I have only been doing this for about 3 months, but I thought you had to put the stones out and get them charged up by the moon and all.
Me too.
So let me just put it in perspective. So
need a bigger house.
This crystal was created in the center of our planet, basically, or deep within our planet, over millions of years. All the energy inside this crystal was deposited by massive planetary level forces over millions of years. What do you think one night on the full moon is going to do to that crystal?
Gosh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
No.
yeah.
I'm like sitting here with my mouth open. I'm like,
we think the same way. I mean, I drag everything out every full moon.
yes. And then I have a question then.
Your crystals
Raven, so
never
do
need
you
to be
take-
charged. They have a massive amount of energy in it that is never going to be exhausted. Even if you use your crystal every single day for the rest of your life, there is millions of years of energy in this crystal. Your measly little 100 years on Earth not really gonna do a lot to tap into this energy. So yeah, you never need to charge it. We need to program it. We can take this energy and we can say, you know, I want to take this energy and I want to direct it to something, right? And this is the difference. So programming is like, let's say you have, so because people will buy crystals and they'll just sit there and go, okay, now this crystal is going to do its thing, right? So here's why programming is important. Let's say you need help with your taxes and you have a friend who's a CPA and you say to her, let's go have coffee. And you are planning to ask her to help you with your taxes. You go have coffee, but you don't say anything. You just sit there in her presence. Just being in her presence is not going to make you magically absorb the knowledge to do taxes. It's not going to magically create the taxes for you. You have to actually say, yo, I need help with this. Can you help me? And she'll be like, yes, I can. Or she'll be like, fuck off. You know, one of the two things she's going to say. So this is akin to asking the crystal, hey, I need help with this. Will you help me? And then the crystal says, yes, I will. And then that energy in the crystal is directed towards whatever intent you had. If you don't do that, yeah, the crystal emanates its own little energy, just kind of sits there and vibrates in its own little frequency, but that energy is not really directed at anything. So just buying a crystal and putting it on and starting to wear it is not necessarily going to do much for you. So if I'm wearing crystals sometimes just for the beauty of it, like for example, I wear this pendant all the time, because it's pretty. I never program it because this, for me, this doesn't hold an intent of this is what this crystal is going to do for me right now. This is just pretty. I'm wearing it because I think it's pretty and it doesn't need to be programmed just for that. Does that make sense?
Yes. You said that you charge your stones based on, say, like full moon in this and full moon in that. So do you like set them out, or like do you have like a log of what you put them in? Like,
well, I put them in a plate and I put them out in my backyard in the full moon when I need it. And the only reason why I do that, I used to not do it at all, but now because we sell a lot of full moon and new moon in the shop, sometimes we run out before the next full moon. So I need to now, you know, make full moon water and there's no full moon. So I have a crystal that I can tap into to get that full moon energy out of that crystal and into that water. And the reason why you let it sit overnight in it is because you want it to, when you work with the moon, full moon energy for that night, what you have 8 hours worth of energy to work with, or however many hours the full moon is. So, and you do all your work in that period of time. So you don't need to leave your crystals out for longer than that. Now, if you're planning to do like big work that you're going to need a lot of it, a lot of energy, more than you can absorb in one full moon cycle, then what you can do is you can take and prepare the month before. You can take a bunch of crystals, full moon crystals, and leave them there for the entire full moon window, which is 3 days, right? The day before, the day of, and the day after. And let them capture as much of that energy. And then on a full moon, you're using the energy available to you, and then you're pulling in energy from all those crystals that you had collected for this massive boost of full moon energy. Does that make sense? So if you want to charge your crystal with a specific type of energy, you direct it and you say, yo, and you have to make sure you're asking your crystal to do that. If you just stick your crystal in the full moon and you don't ask your crystal or program it for what you want, the crystal's just chilling in the full moon. It's not capturing anything for you. It's just sitting there going, oh, nice, full moon. Okay, that's it. That was a complete waste of your time.
oh my gosh.
You need to,
I have
you need
so
to,
much to learn and I have so much to forget.
Yes.
you don't need to, so if you want your crystals to actually, you know, these things are not automatic. I know we are in the land of push a button, something happens. That's not how this works, right? This is, imagine that you are in relationship, a person. You can say to a person, say, you know what, go sit in the full moon. And they say, okay, I'm chilling. All right. And you come back and they say, okay, now give me that energy. Like, what do you mean? You just told me to go sit in the full moon. I sat in the full moon. I didn't bring you shit. You didn't ask me for shit. That's how relationships work. And so that is when you start entering into relationships with your tools, it's important for you to know that. And so when I'm doing a spell, if I'm using a crystal, an herb, everything that I'm using, I'm consistently talking to it. And I'm consistently saying, this is what I need you to do. I'm listening for my answer. Are you willing to do this for me? And paying attention to what that is to make sure that I can get that done. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
We don't
Yes,
have
thank you.
for all of my questions.
Huh? What did you say, Rhonda?
We don't have enough time for all of my questions.
Well, we have some time. So if you have any questions related to this in particular,
I've got to start all over with all of that.
That's what I think. Now I'm like, oh, geez, I have to start completely over. So much to unlearn.
but does
Right.
everybody understand how relationships work and how animism works in those relationships? And why animism is so important?
Because
Yeah.
we're in a relationship with everything.
Right. We are in a relationship with the entire world every day.
So we ask permission as if because, not as if, because everything has a spirit.
Right.
We're giving it the same consideration we would want, basically.
Correct.
Right.
It's a matter of respect. And when you're building a relationship with something, respect is very, very important. And your personal tools, those tools are touching your spirit. It is one of the deepest relationships that you can have, more so than even with a child or a person. Because you have a child and that child is necessarily in your spirit energy all the time. But with a tool, I am constantly channeling my spirit energy through this tool, which means I want to make sure I have a damn good relationship with it, that I understand how the tool works. I understand what it's for. And so a lot of times I'll see a tool, like I have bought dozens of these from this lady. I mean, not specifically this, but she makes a bunch of these wands, right? So I bought a whole boatload of them. I look at something sometimes and I go, that needs to come home with me. It calls to me, right? But then I get home, before I start working with it, I need to sit down. I need to bless it. I need to start the relationship process. What are you here to do for me? What can you teach me? And stones can teach us a lot. Why? They've been around a whole lot longer than us. They've seen all kinds of shit on this planet. So this is why in shamanic practice, we call stones the ancient ones, because they've been around. They're ancient. Think of all the wisdom your grandmother has when you talk to her. Think of the wisdom that people who have lived for, over 80 years have, everything that they've seen and experienced. That's what the ancient ones have. So this is why we want them in our toolbox. And this is why we always make sure that we enter into it in relationship.
Excuse my sneezing, I'm sorry.
Okay. Any questions about relationships?
I'll show it to you. Actually, we bought it from you a while ago, but like I have this like worry stone, and
Yeah.
it was supposed to be a worry stone. That's why we bought it from you for that. But I think like it's become like more than that. Like it's always warm. It's always like, it's become more than just, it's almost like a talisman. Is that like something?
Yep.
Because I can't, I don't.
As your relationship with it
Go
changes,
ahead.
the meaning is going to change.
It was just a comfort at first, but now it's like if I leave without it, I'm naked. It's like I feel different when I carry. It's the red jasper, so it's like when I feel like when I'm carrying it around, it feels like more powerful, more confident. So that's why when you said like you have to make a relationship with it, I was wondering if that's why it feels different.
Yep. And things
Because I
may
can hold all these other crystals and I don't feel like that, but this one I feel like power. I don't know.
And that may change. So for example, this is the one crystal that I picked up at the gem show for me. So this here is a shaman dream crystal. It's called garden quartz as well. It just called to me and I don't know why, and specifically the shape of it, like a teardrop shape. And I have not worked with it yet. I've been sitting here and asking it, what are you here to do? What are you here to teach me? And it has not replied yet. So until it replies, it doesn't go anywhere. I just sit with it until I get a reply. And then once I get a reply, then I take it home. And so the other thing is, I may start working with this now and it's going to say, this is going to be for grounding. I'm going to teach you how to ground because you are all over the place. So this is what I'm going to teach you. So then I start working with it on that. Once I have grounded down pat, I may notice that now this crystal is saying to me, we're done with that. Now we're going to move on and you are going to learn, protection, let's say. Now this is what it's going to teach me. It's going to teach me protection. So these crystals have a lot to teach us. but they understand that we are humans and they can't throw everything but the kitchen sink at us at first. So they're going to help us tackle things one at a time. And as our relationship with it gets deeper, then those things that we are tackling are going to change. As we overcome certain things, it's going to say, okay, now you're ready to learn this. So I'm going to teach you that. And then you learn that. And then it says, now you're ready to learn this. So these are tools that are with you and they're constantly teaching you. Constantly. I learn more from my tools than I do from, anything else. Because I just let them talk to me and tell me what they need me to do. And then they tell me. So as special as we think we are not the only ones to play a role in the planetary cycle. We have partners who do that. And that's true. Animals have a role in the cycle. Rocks and crystals have a role in the cycle. Trees have a role. Wind has a role. Everything around us has a role in this planetary cycle that we have. Every participant, from the smallest pebble to the largest animal, plays a role in this dance of life. When we step in to participate, to claim our role, we must understand it and respect all of the other participants and their role, because it's just as important as ours. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's when we are entering in true relationship with the world around us. We understand what our place is. Any
Wow.
questions?
We're insignificant, apparently.
We're not, and it's funny because when I first started this, I used to think humans are a plague on this earth, because I'm, just like you, Rhonda, I've been in rescue for so long and I've seen so many horrible things that after a while you go, we just don't deserve anything. We're horrible people.
Right.
We just need to be wiped out, but we don't. What we need to do is we need to understand what our role is and fully step into it, so that we can be a part of this cycle. Because what we've done is we have extracted ourselves from the planetary cycle. And now we are making changes to those cycles to benefit us at the detriment of others. We are
Yep.
trying to make changes that we don't understand fully, just to make life better for us, assuming that we are the only important ones, and forgetting that there's a whole bunch of other participants in this cycle.
Selfishness.
Well, and the thing is, there's a book that I read. It's called Braiding Sweetgrass. It's a fantastic book. It's by Robin Kimmerer, and she's an indigenous botanist. She's a PhD botanist, and she teaches. And then she's also a shaman, so she understands the spirit side of plants. And so she had she talks in her book about a story. She had two tribes in the Northeast that were saying that their method of harvesting sweetgrass was the best method, and that all other methods were wrong and bad. And so she's like, let's put this to the test, because she is a scientist. So they had a field that they cut into 4 pieces, and they planted sweetgrass all over the field. And so what they did is they had one part of the field have one tribe tend to it, another part of the field, other tribe tended to that, another part of the field was tended through modern practices, and the other part of the field was left alone. Can you think of which one of those fields did the best?
Probably the modern practices, because we've learned something, so we're caring for it differently. Like if you leave it alone, there's the risk of like disease and famine and things that we would have watched for if we'd have kept after it.
Well, actually, all 3 cycles of both indigenous tribes and modern practices resulted in the same result. They all thrived. The field that had nothing done to it eventually died. And the reason for it is because we play a role in the life cycle of that, and other animals do. When we pull out the sweetgrass to use it, to smell it, when other animals eat it, it makes room for more sweetgrass to grow. It removes the dead parts of the plant. It brings back, it puts new energy and new growth into that field. If you don't do that, eventually all the plant grows, it all suffocates, and it kills each other and it dies. So this is part of understanding our role in the cycle. So if you extract us from the thing altogether, the sweetgrass is going to die. But if we participate as we are meant to, then we thrive and the sweetgrass thrives. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Any questions on that? All right. So we are going to talk about polarity. But before I talk about polarity, I'm going to talk about, have you guys ever heard of the Hermetic principles? Have you heard that word? Do you guys know what that refers to?
I've heard the
The
word.
Hermetic order.
I'm sorry?
I've heard that term, but I don't know exactly what it means.
And I said the Hermetic order. So like I think it was called like the Golden Dawn of Magic or something like that. It's like Rider White and all those people were part of it.
Yeah, but what is Hermetic principles? What is the Hermetic practice?
It's like everything exists, everything has a soul, everything has a purpose.
Well, sort of, but not really. So the Golden Dawn and all those, they built their practice based on Hermetic principles, right? Is what they do. But the Hermetic principles dates back to the first years of AD. So it dates back 5,000 plus years. And so the reason why it's called Hermetic practice, that was a term that was actually coined by the Greeks, because a lot of the birth of science as we know it today happened in Egypt. The Egyptians were the first to start creating scientific things. They were that was the birthplace of all science, was ancient Egypt. And so they had given one of their gods, called the god Thoth, which is the scribe, right? The scribe of the gods, was the one that was credited with the birth of this. So you had a lot of people that were in the Thoth practice, communicating with him, communing with him, and all of that. And they're the ones that got very involved in science. And they believed that a lot of the principles they were learning were being given to them directly from their God. But a lot of these principles were basically principles of observing things and how things actually work in the universe. And so the Egyptians, once they saw that, they were so impressed with that they decided to give Thoth, their counterpoint to Thoth is the god Hermes, who is the scribe basically in Greek mythology. So they decided to give Thoth the name of Thoth of Hermes, Trimegistus, which means thrice blessed, for all the knowledge that was brought into the world. And today, Hermetic principles, basically, even though they weren't originally created by Hermes, but that is the guy who coined the name, so basically it all comes back to him. All of these principles are foundational to a lot of different scientific practices and a lot of different spiritual practices. So the very first principle, so there's 7 of them total that describe how the universe generally works, basically. There's a principle that's called polarity. And polarity is very, very important for us to understand what polarity is, because this is going to be a central part of how we work with magic. So polarity exists in nature, and it follows the Hermetic principles that everything needs both sides in order to be balanced. So polarity is the idea of balance. So for example, let's say you're looking at temperature, right? Temperature itself is its own wavelength of energy. It's got 2 polarities in it. One polarity is hot, one polarity is cold. As you move up and down that wavelength, it gets hotter, it gets colder, it gets hotter, and it gets colder. There is no way for you to say, oh, this is where hot stops and this is where cold begins, because that divider is going to be different for different people, right? For me, hot does start at 68 degrees and higher. It's hot at that point. For some people, hot's going to start at 90 degrees and higher, and it's hot for them at that point, right? So that there's no like measure that's going to say definitely this is where all hot ends and all cold begins. So we're talking about, it's the idea that we work with degrees of things. So we have these 2 polarities, and we're working with degrees within that polarity. So if you look at the idea of gender, male and female, 2 polarities in the same place. So you can have some people that are more feminine than other people, and some people that are more masculine than other people. But ultimately, because both of those things are in the same scale, we all have masculine and feminine within us. It's just a matter of which polarity we are in. And then the idea is that we want to make sure that those energies of masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about your sexual organs, I'm talking about what masculine energy and feminine energy does, is balanced within us. So we want to make sure that that polarity is always sitting in a balanced place. When you're sitting at one end of polarity and the other end of the polarity, you're always going to be out of balance. You want to make sure you're balanced within that polarity. Does that make sense?
How do you achieve that?
Through a lot of work. Understanding, the first part is understanding what are these polarities, and understanding where am I on that scale right now? Where am I sitting on that scale? And so, for example, you're going to have polarity like divine masculine, divine feminine are two sides of that. You will have gods and goddesses are going to be two sides of polarity, right? A lot of times in these pantheons, you're going to see, let's say you have the Greek pantheon, you have all the Greek gods are sitting in this wavelength right here. And in this polarity, you're going to have the ones that are all goody good on this side, and you're going to have the ones that are kind of dark on this side. So, and everything is going to be shades in between for them. So that is going to exist through every single system that we work with within witchcraft. So you have the Lord and the Lady, same thing. You have Jesus, even in Christianity, Jesus and Mary, two sides of the same polarity that you have. Same type of energy, that energy of the divine, two different aspects to it. In shamanic practice, we use the term grandmothers and grandfathers instead of Lord and Lady, because once again, everything is alive, and things that have been alive longer than us are grandmothers and grandfathers. They have earned that title through their experience and wisdom of being in this planet for a very long time. Sun and moon polarities, earth and sky polarities, all of those things are polarities. They are different sides of those things. And so we carry all of these things within us. And when you tend to sit on one side of the polarity and ignore the other is when you tend to be out of balance. But understanding that this polarity exists is the first step in beginning to work your magic and work your practice. Because once you understand that, you can say, okay, the goal of my spell is to be here on that scale. This is where I want to be. Not here, and here. How do I get there? And then you'll be able to understand that. Polarity is super important for all types of spell casting and paganism.
Are the elements that polar too? Because I think you got like fire and water and air and earth.
Everything has polarities. Everything has. You have the polarities of fire, for example, are going to be, you have a little spark, and you have the sun. Those are your two polarities of fire. Same thing.
Oh, each element. Okay, got it.
Each element is going to have their own polarity. They're each individual energies. All individual energies have their own polarity. You had a question, Rhonda?
Yeah, because if polarity, we're looking to find balance, how do chakras work in there? I mean, does that help with the balance of your polarities as well?
Well, chakras are actually degrees within that polarity, right? Chakras are points in our energy body where all of our energy bodies come together, where they all connect, right? Your physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, all of those bodies kind of come together in these chakra points. And so these points are basically points within that polarity scale of energy of where we are. So you can see as you go up and down, you are within the polarity scale as you move through your chakra system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And now there's a bunch of chakras. I mean, the chakra system, as we work with it right now, the human chakra system, the 7 chakras, they're smack in the middle of that. But, our body has, I think it's something like 290 chakras, not just 7. So all of those other chakras are within these different sides of the polarity. But the 7 we generally work with are in the very middle. And this is why they're the most commonly used, because they're the ones that keep us in balance. Okay. We carry both polarities within us with everything that we do. All energies that we touch, we carry those polarities within us, and it's up to us to decide which side of that we want to be on and to make sure that we are sitting in a balanced state. Any questions about polarity? Okay. So let's talk about vibration. This is another important concept in magic and spirituality. So the law of vibration basically states that everything in universe moves and vibrates. This coaster right now is vibrating. So the way vibration works is the slower something is vibrating, the more tangible it is. So the more you can touch it. You need something to be vibrating very, very slowly for you to be able to touch it and hold it in your hand. Spirit vibrates extremely fast. So you can't touch spirit and hold spirit in your hands because it vibrates very, very fast. And if you look at our bodies, we as complete beings are also in that vibrational scale within our polarities, right? So if you think about it, our physical body is the slowest vibration that we have. And then from there, you move to your emotional body and you move to your mental body. And then you keep moving all the way up where you get to your spiritual body and your soul, right? So when you look at the bottom line of that polarity, the slowest vibration is the tangible one, our body. And then the next slowest of that is going to be our emotions. Why? Our emotions can have a direct impact on our body. They make us cry. They make us laugh. They are very connected to our body. So they're not as slow as physically, but they can slow down enough to have an effect on that physical body that we have. And then as you start moving up that scale, you start noticing less and less effect of it in our physical body because it doesn't touch the physical. Then you have to kind of be up on that scale to connect with that energy. Does that make sense? So a lot of people understand. So you're looking at everything is vibrating at one speed or another. Nothing rests. Everything you see is vibrating in a specific frequency, and so are you. So why is this important? This is important because how does manifestation work? When you cast a spell and you say, hey, I want a new job, and you cast a spell, how is that going to happen? So the way that that's going to happen is the new job that you want has not manifested yet. It's still a thought and an idea, has not been given birth yet. It's still floating out there in space at a very high vibration of what it is that you are thinking about doing, right?
Right.
When you cast a spell to get a specific type of job, what you're doing at that point, what your spell is doing, is going all the way up to that vibration, and it's modifying the wavelength of that vibration to be where you want it to be, to give you the results that you want. So that once things start being in motion and that vibration starts to slow down to manifest, it is now going to manifest in the way that you altered it to begin with. Which basically means if you have your review due tomorrow and you cast a spell today to get a good raise, you're not going to get anything. Because chances are, if your review is tomorrow, your boss already completed the review. They've already written down what your raise is. It's already manifested. You're just not aware of what that is. It basically already happened. So it's important that when you're trying to do work for manifestation, you start the work as early as possible so you can have the most impact on how that is going to manifest. And that is why vibration is so, so important. All spell work that we do is essentially connecting with vibrations and altering them so that they can then manifest in the way that we want them to manifest.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's not really Hogwarts, there's no magic wand that's going to turn a child into a toad, right? That does not happen. That's not how manifestation works. But it does work in the very real sense of slowing that vibration down.
Okay.
And this is the other thing that you can do. If you want to manifest something sooner, you can do your spell work, alter the manifestation that you want. And you can even, while it's in this place where it hasn't manifested yet, you can also alter the rate in how long it takes for that vibration to slow down. So that
was going to be my question.
So you can alter that depending on what kind of spell you're doing. Everything that you're putting out in there, you are touching that vibration, and you are the minute you dream something up and you think of something, you've created a vibration already. A vibration is a thought. So if you say tomorrow, I'm going to travel to Italy next year. That's my plan. I'm going to Italy. That trip has been created already. Now it was born the minute you thought it. There it is, Italy trip. Now, if you don't do anything with it, if you just let it go and you don't think about it ever again, eventually that thought is going to dissipate, and that vibrational string that you created is going to dissipate. If you keep thinking about it and start working towards it, what's going to happen now? You keep putting energy into that. The more energy you put into it, the bigger it gets, the more complex it gets. And now once it gets to be a certain size, it has the ability to slow itself down to manifest. So everything begins with an idea and a thought, and then you put whatever you need to put into it so that when it starts manifesting, it manifests exactly the way that you want it to. So this is why last minute spells never work. People come in here all the time. And this is why, for example, I'm gonna play the lottery. I'm gonna do a spell and I'm gonna play the lottery. That thread of that hope, maybe one day I'll win the lottery. It's not a complete thread. It's a thought. There is nothing other than playing a ticket. There's nothing else that you can do to add to that vibration to make it more real. So if you're going to, let's say you're planning your trip to Europe, to Italy, you can start looking up, where you're going to be. You can start doing research and finding out how much money do I need, what a hotel is going to cost me, what are the places in Italy I want to go to. You start coming up with an itinerary. You start knowing how much you want to spend. You start saving money for it, putting that aside. All of those actions that you do through that planning process is adding more energy to that vibration to make it more solid. But in solid, I don't mean like as in physical, but to make it so that it is a vibration that's not just going to dissipate. It's a vibration that says, okay, I'm here to stay. So the minute you put all that into it, it's here to stay. And now you can control how it manifests. You can't do that with winning the lottery. So there's nothing you can do that's going to alter whether or not you win the lottery. It's sheer luck. And casting a money spell and then playing a lottery ticket, not going to happen. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a poor witch in the world.
Right.
Any questions on vibration and manifestation? So the Hermetic principle of vibration states that nothing in the universe is at rest. Everything vibrates, everything is in motion. Vibration is in everything from the tiniest molecule to the biggest rock. In physical and biological systems, we find vibration in matter, energy, and sound. Even if you look at physics, what does physics say? That matter and energy are the same thing.
Mhm.
Matter is a manifestation of energy. That's all it is. And that is true. Occultists state that difference in rate and character of vibration determine the different planes of being, seeing the highest plane as that with the highest rate of vibration, spiritual plane. Also, every mental and emotional state has its own rate of vibration, the knowledge of which would enable a skilled person to influence will. This is why willpower is so important. Willpower is the cornerstone of magic, because that is your tool to go up into those higher frequencies and alter them. That's the one trick you have, one trick pony. That is what you got as a human. You can go in there and you can alter it that way. Or you can enter into relationship with things around you and ask for their help in altering the vibration. You can do that as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's cool.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So interacting with vibrations. This thing here is in my way. Hold on. Interacting with vibrations. So vibrations are not good or bad. We tend to characterize high vibration as good and low vibration as bad. This is a very incorrect statement. The more solid something is, the slowest it is, and the more etheric it is, the fast it is. Good and bad are points on the morality scale, not on the vibrational scale. So we are humans. We are not meant. This is the thing that drives me batshit crazy when I see people keep saying, oh, I need to raise my vibrations. You need to raise your vibrations and that'll fix everything. No, you'll turn into an idiot space cadet when you do that. We are not meant to be at the top all the time. That is not how we were created. We are meant to ride that vibrational scale. We have good times and we have bad times. We have all these energy bodies within us. We are not meant to just exist in one of them. We are multi-level beings and we have to exist within all of those. Low vibration doesn't mean bad. So we need to make sure that we understand that difference. So don't just think about raising. The people that I know that are just raising their vibrations, they're all love and mighty. I want to punch them in the face because half the time they're not even coherent. Some of the shit that they say to us doesn't even make any sense sometimes. They sound like space. And the same way that somebody who's all physical, always down here, never up here, is missing out on a great chunk of life that they could be incorporating into their own existence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions? No, Rhonda, you look like you have a question.
Not yet.
Okay. So now that we talked about vibrations and polarities, let's talk about spirit helpers. So in the vibrational spectrum, spirit helpers vibrate at a very high level because they have no physical body. So if you look at us, we have physical body, a mental body, emotional body, spiritual body. We have all these different bodies that we exist because we are these complex beings, right? Our spirit helpers are not. They have one vibrational body. That's it. They're up here. And this is where they vibrate all the time. This is where they live and this is where they exist. They don't function in the world like we do. So it's important to understand that there's a big difference. They don't have all the same vibrational bodies that we do. So when we interact with them, we have to be in that high vibration to be able to connect with them. We have to be fully within our spirit and vibrating in the vibration of our spirit to be able to connect with them. Does that make sense? Okay. There's a physical correlation that plant and animal spirits have a physical correlation to the plants and spirits in our planet. So this means that if you work with a bear spirit as a whole, bear totem, the physical correlation is to all bears. And you can learn about that spirit by studying bears. So the bear totem, the same way that we think of animal totems all the time, right? We say, there's a bear totem and a cat totem and all these different totems. There's also a human totem. We don't think about a human totem because we're humans and we're like, wow, how is that possible? But we have a totem just like everything else. So if you look at a human totem, what would that be? Human totem is basically going to be helping us with intelligence, with resourcefulness, with creativity. Those are the things that humans bring. Those are the characteristics of ours that are uniquely human to us. So if you look at a bear, what are the characteristics of a bear that's unique to a bear? They hibernate. They're very good at not using up all their energy at once. They know when they need to use it. They know when they need to chill out. They're masters of energy control within their bodies. So the things that the bears are able to do, that is the energy that they bring to us when we are working with the bear totem. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you work with the plant spirit, for example, rosemary, you can work with the spirit of the plant and you can work with the physical characteristics of that plant. So rosemary, what is an antibacterial? That is what the rosemary plant actually does. What is the spiritual correspondence to that? Purification. You can use rosemary to purify yourself, to remove unwanted things, the same way you're removing unwanted bacteria. The correlations between the physical and the spiritual are exactly the same. Some deities are manifested in natural phenomena. So for example, all storm deities are similar in characteristics in terms of what they do, and they all embody characteristics of a storm. So when you're working with a storm god, what is the energy that you're looking at? It's going to be a little angry. It's going to be probably wet of some kind. It's going to have a strong connection with the element of water. It's going to have a strong connection with the element of fire. It's going to have strong connection with the element of air. So all of these elements is what the storm is all about. Not really a big connection with elemental earth. It's not about that. So it's about air, fire, wind. Those are the things you're connecting with the storm god. So those characteristics are basically going to follow the physical manifestations of that, even though it's sitting up here in that spiritual plane. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, Rhonda, you look like you have a question.
So meditation will help you raise your vibration.
Exactly. So when we do a journey or a meditation to meet with a spirit guide, essentially what's happening at that point is we are attempting to put our vibration here so that at this level, we can communicate with them and connect with them. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So the Great Spirit encompasses all of creation. We can work with all of it at once or parts of it at a time. It's important to understand that it always relates back to our planet because this is where we are right now. Our physical manifestation of us is on this planet. On our survival depends on this planet. We are manifested here. And therefore, all of our manifestations are spiritual connections are going to come from things that are also manifested here. Those are going to be our strongest connections. Sure, you can connect with other things from other galaxies and stuff like that, but it's never going to be as strong as your connection to things that are also manifested on the planet. All right. So animal and plant totems. So this is what we literally just covered. So what is an animal or plant totem? For example, a beaver, we like to call it small b, little beaver, is an animal. And a beaver goes around and does this little beaver thing. A beaver totem, capital B, big B beaver, is a totem. The same thing as with sage, right? White sage, small sage is an herb. When you're looking at grandfather sage, which is the spirit of all sage, you're looking at capital S. This is the big sage. And that would be a plant spirit or plant or animal totem spirit. So what role does the beaver play in the physical world? Natural ecosystem engineers. They create ponds and meadows that allow for biodiversity to take place. Many of the species are disappearing because of overtrapping of beavers. Why? Because the work that they do, we'll go back to cycles, right? The work that they do is so critical to their environments that when you have overtrapping and you remove the beaver and the beaver's role in that ecosystem, parts of that ecosystem are going to fall apart. The same way that parts of our ecosystem are falling apart because we have withdrawn ourselves from the role we're supposed to play in our ecosystem. So how can, so knowing all of that about beavers, so how are we going to tap the beaver totem to work with us? Beaver totem is going to create boundaries. That's one of the things it's going to teach us how to do. It's going to help us understand our place in the world, where we live, why are we here? What is the world around us? Especially if you want to connect with the land where you live right now, everything that is very local to you, that is what a beaver totem helps you with. So if you think about human, capital H, what our totem is, and this is what we talked about in the last slide. Does that make sense? The difference between little letters and big letters? Little beaver versus big beaver? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
I was going to say that with those animal totems, are they different? Like, does that animal stand for the same thing across all the different practices, I guess? So like the bear, would it mean the same thing with Wiccans that it does with, shamans, that it does with, Native Americans?
It depends. So here's the thing. So a lot of people will overlay a meaning on top of an animal because they want that animal to identify in that way for them, right? Or a lot of times people will choose the most ferocious or the most one aspect of the animal to relate to, thinking that that's what that animal is going to do for them. But the fact is that that animal brings all that it is. So when you are working with the totem of that animal, you are working with all that that animal is. So it's the perfect example for us, right? So if you are a daughter and a mother and a sister and maybe a coworker, if you are a community member, somebody calls you up and says, hey, can you come over to my house? But you know what? Just bring the sister. Leave all the other things you do at home. You can't do that because you are the entire person. So somebody can choose to work with you and focus on you on just the one little narrow thing that you are, but you are much bigger than that. And so it's important to understand that that applies to totems as well. So perfect example, I work with the polar bear totem. There is a boatload of things about it that are awesome and great. And there's a whole lot of things about it that I don't like very much. But when I work with that totem, those are the things that that totem brings to the table. So the biggest problem that I see right now is people that say, like, for example, perfect example is wolves. Everybody and their brother wants to work with wolves. Why? Because wolves are ferocious. So, especially men, you get a lot of men that come in, especially in my shop, they're dressed head to toe in wolf gear. They're like they're the ones that have those velour pictures of wolves at home, right? They're so into wolves, and that's what they have, right? Yeah. So what they're doing at that point is they're basically godifying wolves because of one component. They love that wolves are ferocious and they run in a pack and have a territory and they're territorial and all of this. But wolves are so much more than that, right? Wolves is a female-dominated society. So male wolves get put out to the pasture quite a bit, hence the lone wolf, right?
Mhm.
So when you start communicating with all that, which is the part that I don't understand, because you have these men that are dressed head to toe in wolf things. They're like, I'm ferocious, I'm the wolf totem. I'm like, really? When are you getting kicked out of the pack? Because that's what happens to male wolves after a while. You only get to live in your pack for a few years and then off they kick you. The women stay permanently. You get kicked off the minute a better wolf shows up. And it always shows up. There's nobody that sits on top of the pack all the time, but they conveniently forget all of these components. So when you start working with an animal totem, go research that animal. So pick an animal and then go watch tons and tons of documentaries about that animal. Understand what that animal is about. How does it hunt? What is its approach to family? What is its approach to its downtime? How does it manage its energy? How does it manage its territory? Is it aggressive in nature or not? What is its technique for avoiding danger? What is its technique for planning for the future, to have food when they need it? All of those things are going to be things that that animal is going to bring to the table, not just the one component of it that you want to work with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like I work with the anaconda totem, right? Anaconda is a fantastic healer. She comes with me in all of my healing sessions that I do with people. Anacondas are very slow moving and it takes fucking forever to make a decision. So if I go to her to ask a question, I better be ready to wait for my answer until she's good and ready to give it to me. Because that is how she operates. She is not going to say anything unless it's worth saying. She's not going to step up and do something unless it's worth doing, because it's a huge animal and it knows that its energy is limited and is not going to waste it if it thinks it can't win. So an anaconda is a very careful predator, and it looks and says, what are my chances of eating that whole thing alive? Okay, maybe I'll go for it. And this is the part to me that's amazing, because in snakes in total instinctually know what can fit in my mouth. And they will not hunt anything bigger than that because it's not worth their effort. All animals have these little quirks about them. So if you want to learn them, then you need to, I mean, that's why I got a snake, because I want to learn more about my anaconda. And I got a ball python, which is in the same family. And trust me, I'm learning a lot of crap I didn't want to learn. But that is how you start understanding the totem you're working with, is about understanding what that animal is all about. Does that make sense?
So we choose our totem animal. They don't choose us. I mean, they don't come to us.
There are many different types of totems. So there's the totem that you were born under, which you don't choose. This is when you were born, there was an animal that stepped up and said, you know what? I got this. I'll watch over them. And
How do we know what that is?
you need to have a shaman journey for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So mine was frog, right? And I thought when somebody first told me that frog was my totem, I was like, oh, freaking frog. You know, I was thinking like, I wanted something powerful and strong, you know, I wanted a bear or a wolf or even like, I don't know, an eagle or something, right? And they said, no, frog. And I'm like, freaking frog. But then if you think about it, what does the frog do? A frog procreates like no tomorrow.
Mhm.
A frog lives in two worlds. It lives in the world of water and it lives in the world of land. A frog also works, he's very temperature sensitive because of the way his body is. So if you look at my life as a whole, I have always been in between. I heard the call when I was very young. So I've walked in the spirit world and in the physical world since I was 5 years old. I'm from two cultures, from Brazil and here. That wasn't by choice. So there's so many different parts of my life that, and now as a shaman, I still continue to work in that world and in this world. I don't have any children. I was never able to have children. So that, you know, the procreation thing, you know, and for my case, the way it manifested was in business. Everything I touch in business pretty much is golden for me, has been for quite a few years now. So that is how the frog is going to manifest that for me. So it doesn't, especially when I first found out, I said, okay, I'm going to go connect with frog and do this. And frog's like, dude, I don't have time for you. I'm busy running the rest of your life over here. You go do some shit on your own. I don't, no. So it's been a slow process to kind of get in, and still frog is the totem that I work with the least, even though it's my birth totem, because that totem is in my business every single day. Everything that I do in my life is watched over by the frog totem. right? So that's a birth totem. And then you can have a power animal. And a power animal is an animal that comes to you, and you can invite it, or you can wait for it to come to you. I prefer to wait and see what animal comes to me. So that animal is going to come to you to decide what is it it's going to help you with. So for example, my anaconda is here to help with my medicine practice. Anytime I do spirit medicine with people, that is the animal that's there. My polar bear is about my personal spiritual practice and growth. That is what he watches over. I have a white buffalo that watches over my business, everything related to money for me and my business. This is what the buffalo does. So you may have these different types of animals, these power animals that are going to work with you at different aspects of your lives for different things. When I first started my shamanic class, the first thing we did was a meditation to figure out which power animal was going to work with you. And I got the freaking meerkat. And I was like, the fuck, man. You know, why do I need a meerkat? Of all things, right? Of all things, I got a meerkat. And it was funny because the teacher in the class kept saying, why is there a meerkat running around here? And I'm like, that's me. But the reason why the meerkat came to me is because I had completely withdrawn myself from the community around me, the community of witches, the community of pagans, because I was like sick of everybody's shit, man. I just kind of went, fuck all of you. I'm going to withdraw. I wasn't really teaching anymore. I wasn't really going into the community and ministering. I wasn't doing sessions with people. So part of why the meerkat was there was to help me come back to community, because that's where my job is. That's where it needs to be. And helping me with tools, because meerkats are all about community, and helping me with tools to come back into the community and to understand that I can be in the community. I don't have to be ruled by the community. And that was a very difficult lesson for me to learn. But that is what the meerkat was there to teach. So it can be with you for a specific area of your life or a specific project of your life. And you can choose it, or you can just put the call out there and say, I need an animal to help me with this. And then an animal will show up.
I have a question. So we get a free 30-minute session with you.
Yep.
Would that be long enough to find out what my birth animal is?
Well, you get a 30-minute session with me for questions about the class.
Okay.
So if you want to book a session for that kind of stuff, I normally offer, if you want to book a reading or a medicine session or anything like that, you can, and you get 30% off.
Okay.
Pretty big discount for that. But no, the 30-minute sessions is only for things that are related to class. But, you and I can work something out there, Rhonda, because, I know where you live.
Now I'm curious too, though, because I'm like, oh, that sounds good. I might want to book that session.
Yeah.
No, let's start with a birth totem and then figure out all this other.
Actually, when I have a specific service that I offer for that, and it's a totem discovery service, and it's actually comprised of, there's 2 sessions in it, and it's $200 normally. And the people who I see, the first session, you're going to put the call out there for which animals are going to want to work with you. And I normally like to do these 1 month apart, at the very least 2 weeks apart. And at the end of that session, you are going to get a list of about 9 to 15 animals that are saying, I'll work with you. And then your homework is to go back and to see which one of those really resonate with you. Some of them may be willing to help you, but they may not resonate. Or some of you may be willing to help you, but not in something that you're interested in pursuing right now. So for you to go back and look at all those animals that came to you and resonate, and then narrow that list down to about 4 or 5, or maybe even less. I mean, ideally like 3, but most people can't narrow it down to 3. But so have that list. And then you come back for your second session. And that's when I journey for your birth totem. So that by the time you're done with that process, you have your entire spirit helper team that belongs to you, that you can then go and start doing the work that you want to do.
We need that, Trisha.
Yes. Can we do a group session?
Yeah, really.
No, generally it's individual, but I can do it over Zoom as much as I do it in person. So you don't have to come down here for it.
So it's 200.
You can just book that on my website. And then since you guys are students, you get 30% off.
Okay.
And overall, it's going to be a total of about 4 to 5 hours total of everything that we do. So that's why it's expensive. Any questions? All right, let's get back to the lesson. So shamanism, voodoo, and Santeria, those are all intricately connected. So let's talk about first, what is shamanism? So shamanism is the most ancient practice of humans in the planet. All religions started as shamanic practice, every single one with no exception. Because shamanic practice is the idea that we are in relationship with the world around us and with the spirit realm. That is essentially the basics, the foundational ideas of shamanic practice. So it works with all concepts of nature, as above, so below. All of that is when you start working with shamanism. So because of that, animism is a central part of shamanic practice, because we talked about what animism is, right? Entering into relationship with the world around you. Everything has a soul and a spirit, and everything corresponds to the spirits of mentalism and vibration, which we talked about earlier today. So shamans are intermediaries that work within relationships to all. So what happens when you are a shaman, or even when you are a witch, a person comes to you and says, hey, I need help with this. This is not working out for me. What do I do? You say, let me find out. You go into the spirit world. You say to your dudes up there, your spirit dudes, and say, yo, either my spirit dudes or her spirit dudes, come here. This is her question. What should I tell her? And the spirits tell you something. And then you go back to that person and say, okay, this is what they said. You need to do this. And voila, there you go. So the purpose of shamanism is to go into the spirit world to retrieve information for healing and guidance and bring it back to the people. And that's been the job of shamans and witches for a very long time. If you ever heard of, you know what your Reuben practices are?
No.
So these are all of the African religious practices, which were kind of a birthplace of a lot of practices we have today. So all of those different practices in Africa are different type. They're all different types of Yoruban practices, and they're all considered shamanic practices. So when you started bringing slaves from Africa over here, and you started, people started trying to indoctrinate them into Christianity, that's how voodoo was born. And because of that, you have different types of voodoo wherever you go. So you have New Orleans voodoo, Haitian voodoo, Dominican Republic voodoo. You have voodoo from Brazil. You have voodoo from all these different practices, which is the combination of these two religions. And then Santeria is going to be a similar concept. But Santeria happened when you had the Christians start moving into Mexico and trying to indoctrinate the people of Mexico into their Christian practices, and those people then mixed Christianity with their Mayan practices. So Santeria is a combination of Mayan practice and Christianity, whereas Yoruban voodoo and things like that are a combination of Yoruban practices and Christianity. And if you look at all the other ones, Celtic practice, Druidic practice, Norse practice, Egyptian practice, they're all varieties of shamanism, European shamanism. And I know we tend to use the word shamanism to imply that, this is a Native American thing, but it's actually that the Native Americans don't even ever use that word to describe themselves. The word shaman actually comes from Siberia. That is where that word was born. It's the official word for practitioners in Siberia of their spiritual path. Any questions on voodoo, Santeria, and shamanism and witchcraft and how all those two connect?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So let's talk about connecting to totem animals. So how does an animal totem, how do you have a first connection with it? So a totem animal may appear to you in nature. Like if you start noticing that you go outside and the deer is always staring at you, that could be the first encounter with an animal totem. It can show up in your shamanic journey. It can show up in your dreams. A lot of times I have had snakes showing up in my dreams since I was a child. It's been with me for a very long time. And this is why snakes are so important and powerful in my life. Liking an animal or a plant does not necessarily mean it's your totem. Once again, both fanatics, right? So when I used to teach a class that was called Power Animals, which was meant for people to discover who their power animals were. And I could always tell the people who came in dressed head to toe in wolves. If they did the journey and they came up and said, I saw a wolf, and I want to say, no, you didn't. You did not see a wolf. You wanted to see a wolf, and that's what you tried to see, but you did not actually see a wolf, because wanting an animal to be your power animal does not necessarily mean that it is your totem. Now, you can initiate a relationship with that animal that way because you love the animal so much and you want to work with it. Doesn't necessarily mean that that animal is going to want to work with you, no matter how many wolf t-shirts you have and how many paintings you put up. Once you know which animal is coming to you, you need to establish a relationship with it. So in the beginning, you may have, like, let's say you go outside and crow is always cawing at you. You go outside the first day, it caws at you. You go outside the second day, it caws at you. The third day, and you're like, what the fuck do you want, right? You're going to start a relationship with that animal. So how do you start that relationship? The first thing I do is an offering. I light a candle. I put a picture of the animal there. I put my intent out there, and I say, yo, crow spirit, I know you're coming to me for a reason. I don't know why. Would be nice to know. So if you would let me know, that would be great. That's my first contact. And then after that, I will go and do an offering. So if I'm attempting to work with crow, I may go somewhere where there's a lot of crows that hang out there and throw some breadcrumbs or something like that, that they would be able to eat. That's my offering to crows, right? When I started working with the polar bear, obviously I can't go and throw polar bear some things to eat because that's not going to happen. So I decided to do that. I went into the World Wildlife Fund and I started supporting polar bear conservation. That's my monetary offering of giving something back to them to help their habitat remain the way that it is. So that is what you need. That's how I begin the relationship. Sometimes supporting the survival of the actual animal will you connect you to the totem and will connect you with your purpose. The important thing is be respectful and grateful. The totem's aid is there to help you, and they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They are not required to help you. They don't have to work with you. They choose to work with you. Big difference. And I can tell you from personal experience, I'm a difficult person. I have a very difficult relationship with my totems because I have an attitude and because I don't pay attention half the time. So that relationship for me with my totems ends up being 10 times more difficult than it has to be. Don't be like me, okay? They say something, listen to it. Be respectful of it. So that's how you begin. And then as you move through the process, they're going to start telling you what they're there for. It may take some time. It took my bear 3 years to tell me what the hell he was there for. I didn't know. At the beginning, all I knew is he wanted to sit with me in the Arctic. That's all he wanted to do. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? What else do you want? But it took time. So that building that relationship takes time. It's not like you're going to see a totem tomorrow, connect with it, and in 6 months, boom, you're already going to know that that's your totem. That's what you're doing. You may know that you're starting a relationship with a totem, but you have no idea what you're doing yet, and you don't know what it's there to help you with. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have a question.
How do you trust yourself to know? I'm probably going to go to bed tonight. I'm going to just vision a zoo of animals and, or try to meditate.
You're going to say that again? Because there was a lot of background noise. Sorry.
How do you, like, let's say I meditate tonight and I have many animals come to me, and how do you trust to know which ones to do your research and do your offerings, etc.?
That's the key. So you don't know. I mean, first of all, you can trust them always because animals are never going to be there to harm you. Animal totems are never going to try to harm you. So you can trust that. But if you do a journey and you see 20 animals there, then right, you got 20 animals to go research, figure out which one you actually are going to work with. And then you're going to ask them. So before you start doing the research and going through all of that, I would go through the process of asking them, lighting the candle, leaving an offering and saying, yo, what's up? Or what you can do is you can wait a week, go back into that meditation again, with a different intent this time and say, I want to know, and this is the other thing, when your intent protects you. So when you go in and you say, I am looking to have an animal that's going to work with me on this,
Right.
not just the general overall happy go-go totem. I want something that's going to work with me on this. Chances are you're going to get less than 3.
Right. So it has
So
it
then-
needs to be specific.
Right. And then if you have any questions, you can do another journey. Tricia, I don't know what you're doing, but you got a lot of background noise going on.
Oh, I think it's the puppy eating her food. I'm sorry.
Okay. And then what you can do is you can do another journey a week later to ask more questions. So you go in, you do your journey, you come back, let that information sit with you. And you may get revelations during that week. You may wake up one morning sometimes and say, oh, somehow I know that the bear that was in my journey was not there to help me with anything. He was just watching us. So, okay, I know that. That is, when that happens, it's a clear cognizance, right? It's information that's deposited to you. That is another way that they can connect with you and communicate with you. So now you know to eliminate that one. So let's go find out the other 2. So once you finally get it down to 1 or 2, then you can journey again and go and say, okay, I got questions now. So whenever you don't know something, ask. And they'll tell you.
I don't know how to journey. Will meditation work? Which I'm trying to learn.
Journey is a type of meditation, and you're going to learn journeying at the very, very end of the class. The very last chapter is going to be a journey chapter.
Okay.
I had a question. So when we did the journeying thing this weekend on Sunday, I had 3 animals come, and then I've been working on those. But what I've noticed is here at my house, I have the same hawk that comes every day and sits on my fence, and he's been coming for a long time. And it's not just him. I've had other hawks that come sit on my fence in the same spot. I've lived here 5 years, except for when I moved to Rock Hill. But when I came back, it's still the same hawk sits in the same place. So is it possible that is something that's trying to talk to me and the other 3 are just there?
Well, have you asked the other 3?
No, that's because we just started talking about this now. So that's why it came up. It popped in my head because even when
you're going to have to ask them. So you journeyed and they showed up for you for a reason, right? I think you're the one that had the horse that was not very interested in it.
Yes.
Okay. So the horse is probably not interested. I would definitely say go ask your hawk, and then go ask your other 2 animals that came in your journey. And then from there, wait for the answer, and they're going to tell you.
Gotcha.
So we don't have to guess. We can go and ask and they will tell us.
Okay.
This is the part of the relationship. It's always a dialogue. Any questions on connecting to totems? Okay.
No.
So ancient ones are going to be crystals. That's another important tool that we're going to use. So what are the ancient ones and why do we call them that? We kind of cover that because they've been here for a long time and they've witnessed everything. So they connect us not just to our planet, but also to every single creature that has ever walked this earth, from smallest to largest. They've seen them all. They've touched most of them. They connect us to all of that. All of that energy is in a way imprinted into all of these crystals. They're also record keepers, especially sedimentary rocks. And when you're looking at sedimentary rocks, all fossils live in sedimentary rocks. So you're looking at your agates, you're looking at fossils, you're looking at your chalcedonies, all of that is going to be, anything that is a sedimentary rock is going to be some type of record keeper. It's been around a long time and it's just receiving information from the environment and recording it. And they give us a record, like if you look, fossils only appear in sedimentary rocks. Fossils do not appear in any other rock. So it's important. This is why sedimentary rocks as a whole have a huge effect in us in terms of knowledge and information and keeping records of the human race and the planetary civilization. You can also work with their energy in 2 ways. So you can work with the spirit of the crystal or the energy of that crystal. Either way, you have to ask for permission. So you can go in and say, okay, I know that this little ball here of fluorite is healing energy, right? Specifically heart chakra, specifically physical healing. If I'm recovering from surgery or something like that's going to be good. So I can choose and I can say, okay, I can journey to this little piece of crystal by itself. And I can say, what are you here to teach me? It may be here to teach me something that is completely unrelated to healing of any kind. That's the spirit of that crystal talking to me. Or I can tap into this crystal and say, are you willing to work with me on healing my heart chakra? Because that's the energy you have. And the crystal's going to say, sure, why not? And then you tap into this crystal and you're using the energy itself of the crystal. Two different ways to work with it. Does that make sense?
Repeat the spirit part. What? I understand the inner.
So the spirit has, the crystal has a spirit, right? So you can connect with this crystal to its spirit and say, what are you here to teach me? I want to learn something from you. What are you here to teach me? And it may turn around and say, I'm here to teach you self-confidence. Okay, great. But this crystal here, the energy within this crystal, the energy that was deposited in this crystal is not self-confidence energy. The spirit of this crystal knows about self-confidence, and that's what that spirit is willing to teach you, right? But the energy of this crystal is all about heart chakra and healing. So you can tap into this crystal and say, hey, I know you got all this heart chakra and healing energy going on. Are you willing to help me? And it'll say, sure, I'm willing to help you. And so now it's going to help you with its energy and what it has, not with its knowledge. When you tap into the spirit, the crystal is going to help you with the knowledge that it has. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Two different ways.
Very cool.
Everything that we talk today goes back to relationship. Every single thing that we do in our practice goes back to relationship. What type of relationship do you choose to have with the world around you? And that's part of understanding your place in that world. Which spirit helpers help you to understand your role in the world and help you bring you back into balance in the natural realm? That is one of the great things that they're here to teach us. They want us to do our part. They want us to step up and take up the role that we're supposed to take, because once we do that, it helps everybody out. So if you go to them and say, I'm looking to be back in balance with this world, they're going to say, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm willing to help you. So that is the one thing that they can definitely help you with. Finding your place in the world is going to give you purpose. If it makes you feel connected, it makes you feel connected. It tells you what your role is, and it answers the age-old question, why are we here, right? I know that I am here to minister. That is my job in this world. I am a guide. I am a teacher. This is what I'm here to do. That has been my purpose since I was very young. Other people come in and their purpose is to heal people. That is what they're here to do. They're here to make sure that people are not in pain. They're here to remove suffering. They're here to do all of those things. Some people may come in here and they're here to maybe rescue an animal. That is their job. Their purpose in life is to rescue animals. Some people may be here and their purpose is to, make money, right? And you may think, well, that's not a real purpose or whatever. It's not a noble purpose. It's very noble. Making money enters that cycle, the economic cycle, that supports a lot of people in our world, supports families. It helps to lift people out of poverty. It helps people in many different ways. So if we are all walking in our purpose, we're doing good. If we step out of that purpose, this is when we start encountering blocks. And the universe is an amazing place, because when you start walking in purpose and you become aligned with your purpose, doors just start opening. You start going like, oh my God, why is this so easy? You may have the same person next to you trying to do the exact same thing and going, dude, this is not happening for me. But for you, the doors are just opening. Why? Because you're walking in purpose. This is what you were put on this earth to do, and you're doing it. The other person was not put on this earth to do that. They're maybe just doing it because you're doing it. And so for them, their path is going to be much harder because they're walking away from their purpose to do something else. Does that make sense?
But what if you don't want to do your purpose anymore? What if it's sad and you're tired of the sadness?
You can, I would say that once you find your purpose, from my experience, you kind of don't get tired of it. It may be difficult, but it lights up your heart when you do it.
I know, damn.
So it's really hard. Purpose is one of the most difficult things to walk away from. And I've witnessed a lot of people when they walk away from their purpose because it became too difficult and they don't want to do it. you also walking away from everything you love, because we tend to love harder when we're in purpose. And the
Yes.
minute you walk away from that, you walk away from all of that. So what happens at that point? The minute that happens, then you're kind of like, you become a very unhappy person. Your life feels like it has no purpose. You have no direction. And a lot of people who walk away from their true purpose, a lot of times keep finding that they can't seem to engage in anything else for very long. Nothing sticks, because that's not what they're meant to do. And so what I have found is the other way around. People that have been doing something their whole lives and they kind of like it and they're good at it and they're doing it. And then all of a sudden, and they were thinking that was their purpose. All of a sudden they discover what their purpose truly is. And it's like a bolt of lightning. That bolt just goes through their entire body and they're like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I meant to do. And then for them, then it becomes real easy to walk away from that job because it was good. Or that life, it was good. It was nothing wrong with it. It was nice, but it didn't give them that fire and that passion. Their new thing does. And so that's what they're going to walk into. So that's normally the way that, purpose can suck sometimes. And here's the other thing. When you have a purpose and you discover and you tap into it, and then you walk away from it, purpose has a ginormous amount of energy. It's like carrying a sun in your back, right? You have purpose. You're carrying all this energy to push you to doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Shit, and I'm getting tingly, which means that one of you needs to be hearing this message. You're pushing forward to get to where you need to go, right? The minute you say, this is too hard, I'm not doing it anymore. What happens is that sun on your back is still there. That energy is still being shoved into you, but now you have no outlet. It has nowhere to go. So it starts just turning in your energy system with nowhere to go. It starts becoming oppressive and destructive. And it can lead to a lot of self-destructive behaviors when that happens. Walking away from your true purpose for some people can end up destroying their lives. I've seen it happen. So I don't know which one of you needed to hear that, but somebody did. Any questions on relationship?
Mm-mm.
No, I'm just letting that bomb sit in the bomb that just exploded in my head.
I know.
So let's move on and talk about elemental balance. So being balanced is a big part of being in balance with yourself and to the world around you. You cannot be in a balanced relationship with the world around you if you yourself are out of balance. So what does it mean to be out of balance? If you are making yourself crazy because one thing or another, if you are all spirit all the time, if you are no spirit all the time, if you are just getting into everybody's business all the time, not making sure that you do what you're supposed to be doing for yourself, there are a lot of things that can throw you out of balance. The minute you are thrown out of balance, before you can go back into balance with all of your relationships, you have to go back into balance with yourself. That is the number one thing. You have to honor yourself first before those things around you can be honored. So there's an elemental balance exercise in your True Magic book. And this is a good exercise to do every few months to understand areas that you're vulnerable and how to balance yourself. It's called the star chart exercise. I'm going to show you in the next page. It's important to understand that the goal of this exercise is not to have the most dots. It's for your dots to be in balance. So essentially what this is, you're going to see that in your book, in your True Magic book, there's going to be an exercise that says, let's work on your star chart, right? And it's going to have questions that are going to walk down. And if you've noticed, you have like this little upside down thing in the middle. There's a pentacle and there's a big dot in the middle of the pentacle, right? And this looks kind of like it's like an upside down, what do you call it? Hexagon. And then on each of these lines, the one that moves up to water, to air, to spirit, earth, and fire, there's little dots. You see where the little dots are? So what's going to happen is when each one is going to give you a question and you answer it honestly and truthfully. And then there's going to be for fire, water, earth, air, and spirit. When you answer something that agrees with you or that is correct, it's going to tell you add a dot for that. So you're going to add as many dots as you can for it, right? And you're going to start here in the middle and you're going to start adding your dots. The goal of this exercise is not to have the most dots and have everything filled. No. The goal of this exercise is to make sure that your dots are in balance, which means, let's say you're going to have 4 dots in each one of them has 4 dots. You're in balance. There are areas you need to grow in, but you are in balance. If you have one area that has 15 dots and one has 1, obviously you're out of balance. So the one that has 1 dot is the one you need to start working on. How can I bring myself into balance in this area? And there will be things in the book that are going to tell you about how to bring yourself back into balance when that starts happening. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's great.
So this is an exercise I generally like to do. We do it in the beginning of the class, and we do it again at the end of the class to see how you have changed through this year. But this is something you can do just about, you know, every few months. You want to give time in between. You want to do it no less than 3 months apart. So as you make changes and you start implementing those changes and change the way you feel, you're going to answer those questions differently. And this is how you're going to start making changes in your chart. The central key to this exercise is to be brutally honest with yourself. Don't just answer something in a way to get a dot. Be brutally honest with yourself as you do it to make sure that you are truly in that place. Any questions? Okay. So recommended activities in this time. There's going to be, other than the things you have in there, this is pretty much going to be all the things you have that you're going to be doing in the class. But think about, what are your views on divine masculine and divine feminine? And how does that apply to you? What is your balance in that, right? There's going to be a lot of articles in there, that part of your lesson this month, that are going to tell you and talk to you about what it means to be the elemental male. What are the characteristics of elemental masculine energies and or divine masculine, and what are the characteristics of divine feminine? And how do they manifest when they are out of balance? What does a divine masculine look like when it's out of balance? What does a divine feminine look like when it's out of balance? So as you start reading that, put those things back on yourself and try to see where you are in that area, in which areas you need to do. Creating the magical you is another exercise. It's going to go through different areas that you have, different areas of your life, and talk about, these are some of the things that you need to do to start bringing yourself into balance. Appendix is going to be the star charts. This is where you're going to do that exercise. And then there's going to be meditations that you're going to create, the Lord of the Wild Hunt, which can be a little scary. So if you get too scared, just kind of drop off and don't do it, right? But it's there. And then the Meet Your Goddess meditation, which is always awesome. Do not panic if you don't see a goddess. You may not the first few times. I did not see a goddess the first few times I did it. So you may not see a goddess in the beginning. It's perfectly fine. Just keep doing it, and eventually you will. It just means that you are not at a place yet where you're ready to start working outside of your own energy. That's all that means.
Are those guided?
Yes, they're guided and they're in the class. And then how do you relate to the male and female polarities? So for example, I have a lot of male energy in me, more so than female. To maintain that balance for me, the struggle is to maintain my female side active. It's a big struggle. So, but that's how I maintain balance. So for you, you need to start thinking about how do those polarities affect me, and what do I need to do to maintain balance in them? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And that is it. That is all I had for you guys. Any questions on anything we covered?
No, I'm just going to go back and review everything a couple of times or more.
And yes, you can stop putting your crystals out on the ledge in the full moon. You don't have
Thank
to do
you.
that.
Lord.
I don't know who came up with that plan, but that is not a thing. And what I think it is,
Hawk circling me right now.
what I think
Mine came to visit you.
What I think it is with the crystals is that probably new agey people, when they first started discovering this world, they saw witches putting crystals out and not understanding what it was and not asking. They probably thought, oh, so you need to put your crystals out. They must be to charge. That must be what they're doing. I'm going to do it too. And I bet you anything that's how that practice got started. So
Well,
that's what?
that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part I have to be careful because I have a huge pet peeve about that. When people come into the shop and they say, I got to put my crystals out tonight. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. There is nothing you can do to that crystal that's charge it.
You need
Crystals,
to yell that out to the universe.
crystals do not need to be charged ever. You can use them to hold energy for you, but they do not need to be charged, period. And it's important to know that some crystals hold energy better than other crystals, right? So if you're using a crystal to hold energy, you want to select a crystal in the quartz family, or a crystal that is like in a highly organized state crystal. You don't want a jasper, you don't want a chalcedony, you don't want an agate, you want a quartz, you want a aquamarine. You want one of those highly organized crystals that are going to hold the most amount of energy, and they're not going to change the energy as it's stored in there, because that's the other thing. Crystals have the power to change that energy based on what their internal structure is. So you want to make sure that you're picking up a crystal that is, let's say, a clear quartz. It's just going to augment whatever is in it, right? So all of my energies are always stored in quartz crystals, always white or clear quartz. So that energy is not modified or changed. And a clear quartz or a white crystal means you can extract from that crystal every single color vibration of that energy. So let's say you have a crystal that's amethyst, for example. Amethyst can store a whole lot of energy, but you can only extract the purple spectrum from amethyst. You can't extract the other colors, the other spectrums. And purple is going to do with third eye and all of this. So if you're trying to do work for your root chakra and you have that energy stored in amethyst, good luck. You can't extract it for that. That's not what that crystal does. So this is why I store everything in clear quartz, so that there's no color there to prevent me from extracting anything. I can extract whatever I want.
Excellent.
Good. All right. If you guys have any questions, let me know. You can post it in the study group, you can message me privately, or you can even post it in the lesson. All right, guys. It was
Thank
good
you,
to see you all.
Raven.
Thank you.
We have another class after this, so do you want to like take a little break before we jump on?
We can if you want to take like maybe let's jump on there around 4:05. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
It was nice to meet you, Rhonda.
Nice meeting you too.